Awful quiet in here.
We can fix that.
There you go.
So David, what are you now, a honeydew man?
Phil, I'm getting caught up on so many things, and yeah, life is good. Grandkids, are not far away, so I'd sure rather be meeting in person.
Yeah, I hear you too. You ought to get a CDL, Dave.
And then what would I do, Phil?
You be my special guy.
Yeah.
I'll let you drive the one that's got the $13,000 worth of wrap around it.
With the arm on it?
Yeah,
I think I'm good.
you would be by the time you were done.
Madam Clerk, are you ready?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Before we get started, Michelle, do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Thank you. I'd like to call the special board meeting of Monday, August 10th, 2020 to order. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Bear,
Present.
Commissioner Walls,
Present.
Commissioner Kennedy,
Here.
Commissioner Duckham, Commissioner Plesky.
Duckham's here.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Mahoney,
Present.
Commissioner Williams,
Present.
Commissioner Elwell,
Here.
Chairman Shotwell.
Present.
All present.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Commissioner Bear, supported by Commissioner Duckham. Any additions? Seeing none, all in favor, please show the symbol. Or say aye.
Aye.
We passed. We've arrived at public comment. We've been informed that there is none. That has not changed, has it?
No change.
Thank you. Item 4A will begin with discussion from the County Administrator Controller's Office. Administrator Overton, the meeting is yours.
I'll unmute mine. Hello. Let me just lay some of the groundwork, reiterate some of the budget situation and some of the options that we are considering. As you know, we find ourselves $2.7 million is our estimate for our deficit shortfall for the budget of 21 starting in January. Now, with that said, we've made some strides recently in the, for lack of a better word, I call it the SRI. It is the SRI, but there's also the LRUA, and there's the new authority called the South Central Regional Authority, Sewer Authority, or something like that. Utility Authority, I think. But at any rate, bottom line on that is we've made some strides. If that comes to pass as currently laid out, we can probably drop almost $500,000 of that shortfall, because we have, or I should say, we are in a situation where we are making or having to make all future SRI payments out of general fund, as opposed to the delinquent tax fund, which is what we've been using to date. So hopefully that will hold that agreement, and there's a tentative agreement. It needs to be ratified by the various townships and entities. That said, we have, of that 2.7, we also have a $500,000 placeholder in that, of that 2.7 from a reduction in state revenue sharing, is what that is. So, and frankly, that's really our best guess. We're just taking a shot. We had to have a placeholder. We are confident, based on all information we've heard, that the state is going to reduce the revenue sharing that they do with counties. We didn't want to overstate it, understate it. It's right in the middle of the road there. So We will
Michael?
see. Hopefully, we'll know that in this month, since the state, their budget is due. They got to get their budget done and adopted by end of next month. So, just as a caveat, yes, Phil.
That $500,000, is that, which side of the equation is that on? Is that in addition to the 2.7
No, that
million?
would reduce the number. We've got the placeholder in there. We were trying to
Okay.
add into the numbers to make sure we have a conservative figure estimate on what we believe our shortfall is. So,
It's expected revenue sharing.
pardon?
It would be expected revenue sharing.
Yes, it shows a reduction in revenue sharing is what it represents.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
There's somewhere, it could be 900 to $1 million that could come off of that 2.7. If those things all work out, if the state doesn't reduce revenue sharing and if the LRUA does approve the SRI agreement.
Mike?
Yes, sir.
To be clear, the 2.7 million deficit includes 500,000 less in state revenue sharing, correct?
It does.
Okay.
It does
thank
include
you.
that. That's to be very clear. Yeah.
Thank you.
We just want to make sure we were covering those bases. So, depending on how things go, I'm pretty confident. Let's put it this way. At this point, I'm confident the state's going to reduce it. It's not like suddenly they found a bunch of money, unless there's just something I have not seen or heard. Please share if anyone knows better. But at this point in time, that's what we have set aside for that. So, we've been looking, as you all know, at various departments, getting right down into the weeds of their operations and all that. And there's going to be more to come on that, as you know. But we were also looking at the opportunity on the other side. Is there opportunities for revenue increases? The counties are very limited in what they can do. We're primarily limited to property tax when it comes right down to the real meat and potatoes of funding county government. We had looked at perhaps a general roll-up. However, the timing is such that there's a lot of hoops to jump through to get that. We could not meet that deadline for this year. That's something that in the years to come, if the board is so inclined, we could take a hard look at that and perhaps move that forward. In the meantime, the only real millage opportunity we have would be for a specific item. Meaning you can run a millage for almost any particular service. We chose public safety. We chose public safety primarily because next year will be the last year of the $500,000 public safety or jail millage will go off, will expire. So, with that said, it seemed like a natural to move in that direction. As per the agenda there, we put in some numbers so you have a sense of what the options are, what a $500,000, $750,000, $1 million, what it represents in revenue. With that, why don't we start with questions and we'll see where it takes us. Commissioner Elwell.
Thanks, Mike. Mike, I think one of the things that we haven't talked about much is the impact of the forfeiture ruling by the Supreme Court recently, which is going to, well, let me back up. The delinquent tax revolving fund has historically done a number of things, including funding capital purchases for us, correct?
Yes.
And that's inclusive of projects like IT projects and importantly, vehicles and patrol cars for the sheriff's department.
Very, very true. All of our capital needs.
Okay, so what ballpark do we normally spend in a typical year, or what was planned for next year for capital purchases that probably is not factored into this 2.7 million? Zero
is factored into there because we don't have any money for that right now. We spend anywhere, it varies, but you're in a safe bet, $2 to $3 million
every year on capital projects.
Yeah. I mean, capital projects, there's some things you can postpone. I mean, for almost, I don't want to say indefinitely, but until it stops functioning. I mean, literally, we did our elevators last year. That was, we've spent more than $1 million on a couple building elevators in the last couple of years, last few years here. We could have continued with the elevators as they were. Unfortunately, the frequency of breakdowns, against to mount up, and at some point you've got to replace them, and that's what we did. So if we didn't have any money at that point, we would have just continued to repair as best we can to keep them functioning. And we can do much the same thing. But at some point, like patrol cars,
Yeah,
patrol cars, you can milk it another year or two, maybe. But in all honesty, they're hard used. They're running a long time. And on top of that, what people don't realize who have never been in one or been a police officer is that really is, intents and purposes, the office of the officer. They may spend a whole 12-hour shift or something in that car riding around. So their own personal safety as well as that of the community, it's important to maintain a well equipped, safe patrol vehicle. So.
well, not to get into the weeds, but are you making some kind of plans to figure out what we're going to do in the future for capital purchases? I mean, how are we going to do that?
Well, truth be told, without that funding from delinquent, our only option is general fund.
Thank you.
We'll have to live within the general fund. We've been blessed to have the funds that we've had, but those days, I believe, clearly are over. The state, I'm very hopeful, will make a change in the law to work through this delinquent tax funding, unconstitutional, this and that dilemma. But it's very unlikely that they will, whatever comes out of that, will provide additional funds for our capital needs. Yes, Commissioner Duckham.
Mike, the convention center building, that has to be paid, cannot be used. Parks money cannot be used for that, correct?
No, actually, that would, that's part of the park system. It probably could be funded that way too.
Did we not tell, when we were requesting the millage for parks, did we not say that parks money would not be used for?
I
center?
think clearly that has been said a number of times on a number of occasions. Yes.
Okay.
The delinquent fund, the delinquent tax fund is what paid for those bond payments.
Okay, so if the ruling stands, how much is that payment every year? Should that be added into a deficit somewhere? We can't pay it out of the.
It will have to come. There's only two places that really, as I can see, that payment would come from. I'm talking legally here now, not what we've said, promised, this or that. But legally, it can come from general fund or it can come from the parks fund. There was no prohibition against it legally. It was not our intent to pay it that way. But frankly, it wasn't our intent to pay it from the general fund either.
How much is that a month or a year?
I don't know off the top of my head. Cecilia, if she's on here, could probably tell us or look it up quickly.
Okay. She can look it up. We don't need to wait. You can
Okay.
get back with me.
Other questions, please? You have to speak up. I can't see everybody. Tony? Commissioner Bear? Earl's next. Okay.
At the end, during the Human Services Subcommittee, Health Department mentioned that with the Department of Aging mentioned that with the passage of the millage, that the Department on Aging would no longer need any monies from the general fund. So how much money was that previously that will now be in the general, left in the general fund that Department of Aging no longer needs?
Yeah, we removed general fund funding for Department of Aging in 2020. So it's already a moot point for 21 goes.
Okay, it didn't sound like that during the committee meeting.
Yeah, well, I think somebody had asked how much general fund was giving them in the past, and historically it was somewhere between 150 and 270, yeah, something less than 300,000 is a safe way to say that. So if you want to use a number like that, we could say, well, the general fund no longer has to support them to the tune of something 300,000 or so. But that, like I say, we took that out last year. Earl, I believe, had a question.
Okay, so yeah, I want to pursue that a little bit more because if general fund had only been providing 300,000 to that particular fund, and we're not growing unless we're growing the actual services they provide by virtue of the millage being passed, we got a $1.3 million difference between those two numbers. Because I mean, I'm doing rough numbers in my head here. 0.35 mils, which was the increase that was just approved, should generate about $1.6 million in revenue for senior services, right? That's the incremental additional revenue that we're going to get from that. And if we were only providing 300,000 from GF, are we doing 1.3 million more senior services? No.
No,
All right.
no.
There's a gap there that I don't understand.
We have a spreadsheet that shows over the length, what is it, the 10 years of that millage, shows the fund balance rise and then reduce over the 10 years. So, and they have excess capacity in the beginning, but in the end, they're back in the same position.
So
Based
if
on
the
the
answer,
spreadsheet.
okay, so the answer to my question must be that we've been plowing through, burning through fund balance to the tune of about 1.3 million a year, roughly. These are all ballpark numbers, but that's the difference between the increased revenue and what the general fund contribution had been, and what is assumed in the budget numbers we're seeing for 2021, right? We're going to have.
That's not exactly correct, Earl. We need to look at. I'll be happy to sit down. We look at the spreadsheet and explain that.
So now I'm going to come back to the question I originally intended to ask when I raised my hand, which is that I think the reason we're having this meeting today is that if we're going to decide to put a millage on the ballot for November, it has to be decided it has to be decided today because the deadline is very close. And I will tell you my personal view that I'm not sure I'm satisfied that we have chewed through our budget adequately to say that we must have this revenue and that we must put the ballot thing on the ballot in November. So I'm just giving my point of view. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Couple things. One, Cecilia just sent me an answer. $275,650, Phil, was that bond payment annually. And in regard to what Commissioner Pileski just said, I agree. What's driving our conversation today is the fact that a deadline is tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have we completed all of our work in regard to looking at the general fund budget across departments and what can be further reduced? No, we have not. We are still in the throes of that. When it gets right down to it, gentlemen, when we're talking about adversely affecting employees and their families, we look at the numbers very closely. We get right into the weeds and say, can we live or not live with this position? Where are we? We don't want to be in a position of being a little too quick or flippant with reducing those numbers like that, because it truly is someone's livelihood we're talking about. And not to be said, I've heard it said here, I've had commissioners and staff as well say, we're not an employment agency. That is very true. We are not an employment agency. We are here to provide services, and frankly, the services that the board, through their priority setting, deems as appropriate. So we'll be having much more conversations about that in the coming weeks, because frankly, we have to approve a couple budgets in September, because their year is on fiscal year, or excuse me, the state's fiscal year, which starts October 1. So yes, Earl, you're correct. Other questions? Commissioner Kennedy, and then I believe Commissioner Elwell.
We had talked briefly and I had sent an email to you, not to the other commissioners, exploring some other avenues of raising revenue rather than yet another millage. Have we explored selling off any assets? I'll let you answer that first.
I would tell you that on my desk, I have a folder about that thick with all the properties and description things that we have. And while, I have no problem with that. If we can't use the property, clearly, potentially it can be sold. Much of that property, though, is road commission, formerly road commission property. Therefore, much of those proceeds would go back to the road commission, or I should say JDOT in this case, the road dollars. They were bought with road dollars. They have to return that way. Additionally, I would say that I try to avoid operational commingling one-time funds with operational issues. And I know you know that it'll solve our problem this year and give us a little more time, which I'm all about. That'd be great. But at the same time, we need to make sure we are all clear that that's really all we're doing. We're kicking the can for another year. And I'll take that year because, every little bit helps. But, and your other questions, sir, in regard to revenue raising, fees, we've explored that. We explored that last year. I know we looked pretty closely at environmental health, to what we could do there to make sure the fee was adequately covering the cost of the inspection, be it a restaurant or a septic tank or those sort of things. We have some other fees in the health department that I think we have looked at in the past, and the board has basically, this is my understanding, my memory was that most of the people who are using the health department for services, inoculations, and so forth are probably the least among us able to absorb a new cost increase. I know many of their fees are none or minimal. And at the same time, the service we provide there is pretty critical. We want to make sure that people are, taking care of whatever it is they need to take care of. When I say whatever it is, it could be child inoculations, it could be sexually transmitted diseases, it could be, those kind of things that we want to make sure that encourage them to come to the health department, because the alternative in the long run will cost us much more. When I say us, society, it will say, if not us directly, the county.
Okay. Because really my thinking in that, and I don't have a problem in saying what I sent to you, was that the individuals utilizing those services should pay something. I'm not advocating hellacious increases here, but for example, immunizations, if we looked at like just a nominal increase, $5 an immunization, and looked at the amount of immunizations the county does in a year, that would be a reasonable fee that I don't think would decimate people to pay $5 if they weren't paying anything, to see what that would generate. But and then just lastly, I don't think it's a one-sided equation of just raising more revenue. I do think we're going to have to face the inevitability of some cuts are going to have to be made. It's going to have to be a two-sided equation. Can't just keep passing millages to get out of funding. It's not right to keep doing it to the taxpayers. That's pretty much all my comments.
I don't disagree, and I don't think anybody really does with that kind of thinking. Nobody wants to pay more in taxes, and nobody wants to see or believe that their the services that are being provided here are either irrelevant or over bloated programming or something to that effect. So yeah, it's a two-way street for sure. But at the same time, as I've laid out in the past, there's real reasons why our revenue has not kept up with inflation. There's laws in place that particularly keep it from doing that. And while you can absorb those those differences for a while. But like anything else, over time, those little numbers start to add up. Next thing you know, you have a real number in front of you to face. And given the situation now with the delinquent tax, as well as some of the other things going on, COVID and among others, and trending in, for instance, trending in traffic tickets and things like that. Not to suggest that we fund ourselves or want to fund ourselves through traffic tickets, but if the truth be told, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they were a much more significant funding source of services than they are today, substantially reduced over time. And I think there's a number of reasons why that is. It's not just that officers aren't writing tickets. There's a whole host of reasons going on there. But in the end, it all adds up to a revenue shortage is what it comes right down to. So we either have to decide either we're going to increase our revenue or reduce our services. And I think it's very fair to say there's room in the middle there for something like that. Other questions, concerns? Darius, please.
Thank you. I agree with Commissioner Kennedy's, the latter part of Commissioner Kennedy's questions and comments there. Have we looked at any potential cost or any potential cuts and or reduction in services at all to help compensate with the initial cost?
I missed the part. Did you say we what?
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just saying that I agree with the latter part of Commissioner Kennedy's comments, and I was wondering what have we looked into any additional cuts or any reductions to help compensate with the dollars that we're trying to find?
Oh yes, we're in fact looking at every general fund department is what we're looking at. Well, be it mandated or non-mandated, it doesn't much matter. We're looking at general fund dollars there. You know, as I pointed out to the commissioners, I believe last week, and in the communication, you know, for instance, the health department, we're looking there. They have a number of programs where their expenses exceed their revenues. Those are grant funded, or we need to take a look at those and ask the hard questions. Why is it that you're spending more money than you receive for a grant to provide this service? It may very well be that it's something the board believes is vital, is critical, and you're willing to subsidize it. On the other hand, it may not be, and therefore they need to reduce staffing or what have you to make sure their expenses meet their or stay within their revenues, those kind of things. So there's a number of numbers there, and we're literally looking at all the different departments with that type of thinking in mind. Most of our departments do not have revenue. That's why they're funded by general fund. They're internal services or you know, those kind of things. Well, we're looking at everything for sure.
And then, so with that being said as well, have we looked at any increases in any fees at all, or of our current fees? Have we discussed that?
We look at those, yes, we look at those every year, actually. What we've done is we have a big master fee list that we bring to the board every year to review. Now, most years, there's only a few fees out of the hundreds we might have across the broad array of services that get changed at all, be it up or down. And frankly, mostly it's generally up, not down. But that's something that we try to make sure the fees are direct correlation with what it costs to provide the service. That's why there's a fee. We're providing some service that is above and beyond what the average taxpayer receives, and therefore the expectation that that person be benefiting from that service should pay for it all, if unless otherwise deemed something that we need to subsidize. And there's many fees like that. I can argue all sides of those equations. Environmental health fees, for instance. I've had boards in the past where we've literally, frankly, had those discussions about building permits and you know, septic permits, and it's where we've said, you know what, we want to encourage economic development. We want to encourage people to come forward and have an inspection. We don't want to necessarily make that fee a draconian fee. We want to make that fee, something that most people can afford. Even though we may not cover our full cost, we subsidize a fee like that sometimes because we believe the greater good in the long run is served by that. But again, that is a decision the board has to make as we look at each and every one of those fees.
And then excuse the redundance of this question, but are there, and I think I know the answer to this already, but are there any state or federal dollars that we could petition for to help compensate with any costs of what we're trying to do here?
Sadly, I don't believe so. We have, there's a whole lot of COVID money that everybody is talking about and throwing around. Well, typical in my experience, when there's a real problem, the federal government throws a whole lot of money at it. And we've had a number of different grants that overlap. So we may have said, oh, well, we'll apply these expenses to this grant. Well, then we have another grant opportunity. We go, oh, well, we don't have an expense to apply to this, or we may not be eligible. So there's some of those kind of problems. But as a rule, frankly, day-to-day operational monies that for what we do and are expected to do day in, day out for as a county, no, there's really not new money for that. Not that I've seen or heard of.
Okay. Well, thank you. I have no further questions at this time.
Anyone else? I believe Daniel and then Tony.
Thank you very much. First of all, for sending out the information that I requested. I feel like that information is very important for our commissioners all to have the same information that I had on this subject. I think my first question is with the road department, specifically with the road department. I know that some of the places in townships where our sheriff's patrol have contracts, and there are a lot of places in townships that do not. Has there been any thought about us looking at introducing some new contracts? Because a lot of those areas that we're patrolling, they're not paying for that service. And we just got done talking about paying for services. And I'm just curious if there's been any thought around create new contracts for the services that our sheriff's road department, road patrol.
I think I understand the question. First, let me say that the contracts we have with villages and townships who are with the sheriff's department for road patrol, if you will, they're asking for service above and beyond what the sheriff currently provides. And that's typical. That's why cities form, if you will, because the folks who live there generally want a higher level of service than the larger jurisdiction provides, be it a county or a township for that matter, what you have. And in this case here, it's these townships, the ones we have contracts with, have said, we understand that the sheriff's department patrols our township, but we want more patrol. We want additional service. And therefore, they contract with the sheriff specifically to provide those services. So by reason, the townships who do not provide for additional service, they are relying on the if you will, the standard patrol coverage that the sheriff provides all townships and all residents for the taxes that all townships pay, all property owners pay to the county to fund the sheriff's department. So the answer is we haven't solicited any of them for monies to that. At least I haven't, or I'm not aware of it if they have. I guess we could ask the sheriff specifically that, but I don't believe they have. Generally speaking, it's the other way around. They come to us and say, we want a additional service delivery.
Okay, understood. Can you provide a list of those contracts that we do have with different townships or municipalities for the services that we provide? I'm just curious to see a kind of a comparison of what townships or municipalities are paying for those additional services, which ones are not, and then which ones have their own police and which ones do not. Because I think that there's probably going to be a gap there where we're probably providing some additional services for no additional fees, due to that particular municipality not having any police force themselves. The second question that I have is still around the road patrol. I'm curious, Mike, can you tell us if at all, when the last time the sheriff's department received a cut to their budget, or their budget was reduced in any type of way?
Yeah, I believe last year they reduced, what was it, four people, I believe? Yeah.
They reduced 4 people, but that was through attrition though, correct?
Well, regardless of how it happened, there's
Well, no,
four
that's
less
just a
people
yes or
working
no
there.
question. If it was through attrition, that's fine. I'm just curious if they've actually cut their actual budget.
Yes.
So, but through attrition though, correct?
Be honest with you, I couldn't tell you if he laid them off or they retired. Do you know, Deborah?
I believe I understood it was through attrition as well, which is the preferred method of doing it to cause the least harm to individuals. But I believe it was attrition, but I can't be sure.
Can we just get some clarification on that? Because if I'm not mistaken, I think it was through attrition, and not that I have an issue with it being through attrition, because of course we want our officers, our employees in general, to be the least affected by when we have to make changes to the budget. But I am curious to know, because to me, that's when I don't know. I guess I don't really look at that as being a budget cut. I'm also curious.
Commissioner Mahoney, I must beg to differ with you there. If if 4 people retire and we do not replace them, that is a budget cut. That's absolutely a budget cut. Though we spend less money, they have less people to either provide road patrol or corrections officers or whatever the case may be, but it is a budget cut. Was it a little less painful because people were retiring? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I understand. I agree
planned
with
for that.
I can agree to that as well, Mike. I can agree
Thank
with
you.
that. My next question is, I guess, and I don't know if this would be a question for you, or maybe a better question for the sheriff's department to directly answer. But I'm curious, when looking at the reduction of the traffic violations that have been reported on that document that you sent out. Hang on, I'm going back to it so I can make sure I'm speaking directly to that document. So in 2005, there were 46,544 traffic violations. In 2019, there were 13,928 traffic violations. I'm just curious, with that significant of a reduction in traffic violations, how can we possibly justify needing the same level of services that we're trying to retain right now? That's where I'm severely confused at, is looking at the traffic filings from our road department and the reduction over the years. There should have been a natural reduction in the services or the amount of staff over that time, looking at the reduction, but there hasn't been. We've retained the same amount of people, or tried our best to retain the same amount of people. I'm sure we've seen some reduction over the years in staff, but not in matching to the reduction that we've seen in the traffic violence. And I'm sure that somebody is going to say that, public safety shouldn't be dictated by the amount of tickets, because of course that we don't want to do ticket quotas or anything like that. But I do think that we have to be realistic. And if there is a good answer for it, I'm just curious if there's what the reason in that reduction is, if we have that information.
Let me see here, a number of thoughts on that. I'm looking at my screen here. I just pulled up a spreadsheet that we've been working on. There's a number of spreadsheets I'm working on here that show 15 years of budget information. So it shows revenue, expense, and FTE count. And to give you some sense of it, I've just pulled up the sheriff's. In 2005, you had 65 full-time employees here. And In 2019, he has 47 and the sheriff's department there. So there has been a reduction, whether it's commensurate with. I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Dan.
One more time for me.
Dan-
I was
Daniel?
just asking if you could repeat those numbers for me one more time, please.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and I will share all this information with the board. We just been verifying the information, because what we
Mike?
did was yes, sir.
Can I just respectfully, can I suggest that Daniel shut off his video? He's going digital because he has such a poor connection. It seems like if he shuts his video
Yeah,
off.
I just did, Dave.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
Thank
what
you.
I was saying is we're working through these spreadsheets. We basically did a budget dump from our system, and we're having to clean it up. I've got every department, and we're looking at 15 years of data, and from 05 to 2019. We're saying how much was the revenue, what's the expense, and how many FTE counts, and taking a look at over time what has happened with that. In 2005, the Sheriff's Department here reports 65 FTEs, and in 2009, it's 47 FTEs. Now, so they have seen a reduction, whether that is commensurate or proportional with the reduction in tickets. I can't say yet. I'm not that far along. I would tell you that along with the Sheriff's Department, I've had district court. Hang on, I got another spreadsheet. I grab. Yeah.
That's all of them. We didn't have sheriff.
Yep. So I have, like here, I was looking at district court just a little bit earlier. And district court back in 05 had 55 employees. And today they have 41. And I know they've already suggested that they would be able to reduce that number by an additional employee, so potentially 40. So there has been reductions.
I'm sorry, can I ask just a question in between
Sure.
there? Really
Go ahead.
So with that reduction at the district court, didn't they also have a reduction in their budget that they cut from other areas outside of these employees that they lost?
I'm not following the question.
So
Could you rephrase it?
were there other areas of their budget that they cut outside of the loss of these employees that we're talking about?
Who? District court?
Yes.
I'm not sure how to answer that. District court would have reduced, for instance, if you look directly at employees that are working with tickets that are written, they would reduce that number because there's a lot less tickets to enter, as well as there's technological gains and like e-ticketing and some of those other things where there's less data entry and things like that. So there'd also be some technology gains, which would also warrant reduction in staffing. And they have dropped considerably. They really have over the years. Whether there's more there, that's something to obviously to discuss with district court.
Maybe you're misunderstanding my question there, Mike.
Sure.
My question regarding that reduction. So we're talking about reducing budgets, and I'm looking at, like you said, the district court over that 15-year span went from 55 employees to 41 employees over that 15-year span. And some of those employee cuts were a part of trying to reduce their budget or bring their budget down some. I was asking if there's anything outside of that area of reducing employees that particular department has had to do to reduce their budget. Any services that they had not provided, or any areas that they've had to cut from? Are they buying less paper? Do they got less phones? Is there any other areas that this particular department has had to cut from to reduce their budget that's not associated with not retaining the same amount of employees?
Well, that's not associated. Let's just say probably not a lot, because when you have less employees, you have less phones, you have less paper, you have less tickets. When we buy new technology, they have less paper usage and some of those things. We've looked at those things, sort of they have less supplies and all those ancillary things that go along with the amount of work to be done. That's all been reduced. But by and large, what the court does is what they do. I mean, we don't have there's not another way of doing it. A ticket is a ticket, a judge is a judge. You have to go in front of them. Now, are we doing some things like video arraignments and things like that, so you have less travel with inmates to and from court and jail? Yeah, sure. Those things, they've done a lot of those kind of things. I know with the e-ticketing, with through the officers to the court, to the prosecutor, and all that. Again, saved a lot about time, as well as reduced the need for staff. So I know they've all made some changes in that area there, if that's what you're asking.
Not directly, but I can take it offline. I mean, I think essentially the answer is almost every cut that our departments are making to reduce their budget is associated with them reducing the amount of employees they have. That's kind of what it seems like it's tied to. Is that correct or no?
That's absolutely correct. Daniel, we don't have anything else. We aren't an equipment, an infrastructure organization. Government is basically people providing services for other people. There are no, I think, other than equipment, be it cars or things like that, that are associated, again, directly with employees, the number of employees you have, I can't think of anything. If you look at like a automotive manufacturer or any of those kind of companies, they have a whole plant and equipment making car parts. The employees, they can, in fact, a lot of times they have replaced employees with robots. We don't have any of that. And we don't have robots to meet people at the window and take care of their needs. There are some opportunities to do some things online and electronically. Clearly, we've done that. Perhaps we can even do more of that. And I know they've done more like electronic tethering and things like that, again, to reduce cost from the greater system. Not necessarily reduce costs in district court or circuit court, but at the same time, it does work. And I know they eliminated the intensive supervisors program CAR, things like that. So yeah, we've been doing those things. But just to reiterate what I said, we're an employee organization. It's just that simple. The costs are our employees. It's not in equipment. Except maybe JDOT. They've got a lot of equipment. Anything additional, Daniel? Otherwise, I'll go on to the next question.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for the clarification. I'm sure I got more questions, but just not right now.
Dave, do you have your hand up?
No, Tony.
Tony? Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, Tony. Commissioner Bear, yes.
I did as well, but I'll wait.
Thank you.
All right, proposing a new millage here. Well, millages are just taxes.
That's right.
To go straight to a specific entity. So we've got parks millage tax, an animal control millage tax, a Lifeways millage tax, a jail millage tax, which is probably going to come back to us next year to get that renewed. We just renewed a senior services millage tax. And now you're going to try to add on to this a public safety millage tax. I think we're taxed enough already. Millage is also what I know it's a state law, but I find it disappointing that if our citizens approve a millage, there's 8 different agencies that siphon that money off. Downtown development authorities for cities, villages, townships, local development finance authorities, brownfield redevelopment authorities.
Mm-hmm.
So when you pass a millage, all of it doesn't even go to the purpose it was intended. So I guess I'm not in favor of doing another millage and another tax and having the money siphoned off to something else. We're taxed enough. I think we've got to figure out a way to pay for it within what we've got. you were talking about 2.7 million deficit. Well, if the SRI agreement goes through as we've been hoping, half of that deficit will be corrected, will be eliminated.
Well, 500,000 roughly.
Pardon me?
Yeah, about 500,000, just shy of that. That'll be a reduction. So 2.7 becomes 2.2 with no capital consideration.
Our last discussion, if the SRI agreement was authorized the way it was proposed, we would get an immediate $1.2 to $1.3 million.
You would.
Tony, that can't
Okay,
all
so
go.
then your
That can't, Tony,
2.7 deficit is cut down
Tony,
by 1.3 immediately.
Tony,
Interrupt
Tony
me
Bear.
again, go ahead.
that can't go to the general fund. It has to go back to the delinquent tax fund. That's where that money came from. So that money's gonna go back there. It won't go back into our general fund. So we can't use it to pay this deficit, sir. I'm sorry. I wish we could.
Well, I'm sorry, I wish that had been explained that way. In previous meetings, it was not. So anyway, this is just another tax, and how many more special millages are we gonna have? We already get 5. Now you're asking to go to 6. I don't like public safety being tied to a millage, because then if you got a group, you get enough citizens that want to go along with just defunding and eliminating our police, which would put us back to anarchy. This is the method they could do that.
Democracy. I agree with you. You're right. The people
No,
will
we'll go back
vote
to democracy without our police.
what they want.
It would go back to a situation like was in Mogadishu 20 years ago. All right, I'm done.
I believe Dave, Earl, Phil, Darius. Now I won't remember that. I just was counting the hands. So you guys remember that.
Yeah, because you forgot me, but I already talked once. So I'll say first off that what Tony talked about, all those collections that come from millages for LDFAs and DDAs, Tony, that is state law that needs to change. We don't do that because we want it or like it. We need to have the legislature change that, and I agree with you. Mike, to your description of contracting with villages and townships, I think the best way to describe that is when that does happen, that is for a dedicated deputy during specific hours.
Absolutely.
That doesn't mean that there's never a deputy there any other time besides that.
Correct. It's a higher level of service.
Right, just general patrol, but that's for dedicated deputy during dedicated hours. The next thing, I'm glad you brought up the health department, because I think we were working under a false impression that we had to fund many of the things that we did there. You more recently learned that number wasn't necessarily accurate and circulated the accurate information. I personally see law enforcement services are the one true service that local government or counties provide to their residents. If you think about it, you know, it isn't providing a service to do tax collection or assessing. Those things aren't services, but law enforcement services are. And I think they're expected by our community and by our county. And I think that's one of the reasons that we have a general millage. And Mike, what is that rate that we pay? Is it over 5 mils?
It's 5.18, long number.
Right. So I would not support a separate millage right now to support law enforcement services. I think it may be worth a look when the Chandler Road or the jail millage goes away. And I remember that millage pays off the bonds, and it was also designed to pay for the staffing of the Chandler Road jail. So it pays for employee costs. I would not.
Yes, about $900,000 roughly goes towards operations there.
Right. So I would not necessarily support that now, maybe when that expired, but I won't be around at that time.
Well, we'd like to think you're still going to be around.
Well, I will be around, but not here voting and arguing.
Lord
with you.
willing.
I'll certainly be watching and keeping my
Okay.
fingers crossed. So I do want to support our law enforcement services. Like Tony, I don't support cuts there. I recognize that things are tough and we need to keep looking, but I would not support a separate millage at this time. Thank you.
Let's see, who was it? Was it Phil next?
I'll go next.
Commissioner
Who?
Earl.
Earl next? Who was it?
Darius and then Phil.
Was it Darius? Okay.
Darius and Phil.
So it's my turn?
That'll work.
Okay,
We have time.
I wrote it down, but I'll go with it.
All right.
So I just have a couple of quick questions. I don't know if we have, and if we have, you could remind me, has the current sheriff department had any opinions on the matter?
No.
So we're just doing this just for just budgetary reasons, that they don't have any concern and or approve or
I
oppose?
won't say they don't have any concern, but I would tell you that we haven't had a lot of conversations in regard to this. This is a county administration looking at our budget situation and saying, we see a problem on the horizon. We need to make sure we're developing some kind of plan, be it through increase or decrease of services to balance our budget.
So I guess with that being said, I guess I can, and in some ways can appreciate the work that we're doing. However, I would like to hear, I think it would be important for commissioners to hear from the sheriff's department on their concerns, whether they approve or disapprove of any decisions on the matter, as we are making a decision or potentially making a decision that will either negatively or even positively work within their department. And then my second question is Commissioner Bear has also mentioned we have roughly 5, maybe 6 current millages. Is there I think it is just 5 millages. Is there a cap, if you will, on millages that a county board can ask, or that we can ask?
Not that I'm aware of. Just a word in regard to millages for specific purposes. It seems to be more the trend. My personal experience and talking to my peers and so forth and watching what they've done and those, of course, those conversations is the belief that people want to know that the money that they spend or they approve for their taxes goes to a specific thing that's important to them. So that's why you've seen success in some of the more individual millages, be it parks. People have said that's important to them. The animal shelter, they've said that's important to them. Mental health, they approved. Department of Aging, they approved. We have these millages. It's not as if you've imposed that on people. We've gone out to ballot, and the voting public in our county have said, we value that service and we're willing to pay for it. It's that simple. Now, back in the day, when you didn't really have all these millages, back in the day, and I say back in the day, I'm going to go back, it's even before me, go back 100 years ago. You look at county buildings for their time, they were ornate. They were Taj Mahals. You look at water departments, you go to Detroit and look at some of the water buildings and different things down there. Granite and marble and beautiful. Back in those days, government was much more respected and revered, and people had more confidence, if you will, and were willing to give monies and a general tax appropriation for their elected officials to use as they will to meet the needs that they had. Today, you don't see that as much. Today, most people, let's just say it this way, most people don't necessarily trust government, and they want to know that their dollar is going legally, can only go for a certain thing. So that's why we've chosen to go down that path, because we believe if you go that way, it really does tie our hands to some degree. We can't spend the money otherwise, how it was laid out on the ballot and approved by the voters. Now, our general fund budget is gone down, obviously, way down over the years. It's over $4 million down from what it was back. When I say what it was, I'm talking about in relative dollars, inflation, and all those kind of factors that factor into it. And I don't necessarily believe that people get excited about, I hate to say it this way, about passing millages, tax increases, if you will, Tony, to the black hole of government and say, here's my money. Hopefully you use it wisely, because they've seemed to have migrated towards taking away our discretion in spending. At least that's what I've seen more than all across the board.
So
Hopefully I answered that question.
Yeah. Just in the interest of time, I do have a couple other questions, but I will email those to you, and then we can send them out to the other commissioners as well. But my last question for you is Commissioner Elwell also mentioned the general millage, and I was curious if within that general millage, how much does the sheriff department see of that, or if it does?
All of his money comes from general fund.
Right.
But that's not true. There's 900,000 for the jail portion of operations that comes from that millage, that half mil.
Okay, so let me ask it this way. Maybe my understanding isn't correct. So the general millage that we currently have, is that monies that go into the general fund and then we pull from there to go to various departments?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So out of that allotment that would go to, or is there an allotment that goes to the sheriff department currently?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Hang on,
Okay.
let me grab that number.
7.201 million.
Just tell me enough. Yeah. The total number general fund contribution is, and this is for sheriff and county jail, is 7.2 million. And then on top of that, we have another 2 million road patrol. So 9.2 million is the total cost of the sheriff's from the general fund.
Okay. And this is what goes into that department for a year's time?
Per year.
Okay, and then what is their last question? And I'm sorry, I'll go on from here. How much is their budget per year? Can you remind me that number?
Sure. Let's see here. 2 million more than that.
Okay.
12.4 million.
Thank you.
Roughly 2.2 million shortfall. Okay.
Well, that they received from other funds. So
I'm sorry.
That money comes from other sources, like the millage, 900,000, those things. That's what we're talking about.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. I'll email out the remainder of my question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Who was it? Was it Phil?
We talk about the road patrol. Some people like the millage idea. Some people hate the millage idea. I wonder if there might be a compromise that would make everybody feel like they've done something good for the community. What if we contract out the road patrol like we do for Norval Township? Rather than end a road patrol by a millage failing, if that would be the outcome, just have the communities choose if they want road patrol or not. Adam Brown and Adam created a map for me a few years back when I was vice chair. And between the townships that have their own police force and the city, the contracts that's already out there with the sheriff department, like for Norval Township and Grass Lake Township, it didn't leave a whole lot of people that would continue to need road service, road patrol. And maybe we could look at who doesn't already have a dedicated patrol. Do you want one? And this is what it's going to cost you. And,
So you got to remember that Summit Township, I think, is the only one that contracts that has 24/7 protection. Norval, Grass Lake, Concord, others are contracting for hours, but not for 24/7.
Well, Norval's contracted for, I think, 48 hours now. And they pick and choose when they pick and choose when they're going to be, they agree upon when they're going to be providing that service. But then we have road patrol. They don't have a millage. If you want the service, you pay for the service by the area. I mean, like you said, Summit, others already are. Concord. Maybe we're not that far from going that way rather than everybody go by a millage. Just start it out there. We got to find something that works and
Is,
maybe discuss
I
it.
think, I think, isn't it something like what Daniel was saying? Did I misunderstand?
Yes, that's exactly what I was kind of alluding to.
Okay, well,
I
thanks. I was
think
just trying to make
you
sure I
said
was
it a
hearing it right.
little better than I did, though.
Well, if you take a map of the county by township and municipalities, we're going to find a lot of them are already have their own service. And state police provide a second layer, and the county actually provides a third layer. I mean, more the better as far as I'm concerned, but rather than do a millage and have it voted down as an example, and having no road patrol, we'd go a pay-per-use type deal. That's all I got. Just sort it out there, see if there's any interest.
Who was next? Darius, what's your list say?
Well, according to my list, it was my turn, so I already went.
Oh, okay. You want to go again?
I'm good.
Other questions, please. I believe Dave raised his hand. Sir.
Mike, what's your plan? If there's not support to go for a millage, you're 2.7 million short and can't buy anything with capital improvement. What's your plan?
Well, I was going to say, Commissioner Duckham, this isn't a all or nothing kind of proposition. At least that's not where we are at this point. Our position is that, frankly, our position is that if the board were to approve the millage proposal, that would go to the November ballot. If it failed, we would continue. We'd be implementing Plan B, which you would have approved by that time. And Plan B is we need to dig deep and make the necessary cuts. We have to live within our means. It's just that simple. No one will like the outcome of that. No one's going to like the outcome of either way. No one wants to pay more taxes, and no one wants less services. I mean, that's just the truth. But at the same time, no different than your home, we have to make sure we live within our means. And unfortunately, I think Dave, you hit the nail on the head there, was what we're discussing right now is our shortfall. We haven't really dove into our capital shortfall. That's another discussion. One walk before you run, one thing at a time. Even if we dig deep and make all the cuts and cut the $2 million that we need to cut, we'll say, assuming everything goes SRI and all goes the way we hope it goes, next year, we're having a conversation about another 2 million. I mean, working our way towards that, because somehow we got to have some money in the bank to fix stuff that needs fixed, buy more patrol cars, fix elevators. You never know when a boiler is going to fail. And that's why we have reserves in our fund balance. But at the same time, that is down to our minimum in my mind. It's at 19, our minimum is 18%. We don't want to keep letting that number go down. We can't let that number go down. We have an obligation to the people who live in this community to maintain a well-balanced operation that they are willing to pay for. It's that simple. If they're not willing to pay for it, they're saying to us that we do not want that level of service. At least that's, well, people vote with their dollars. Next, please, anybody? Earl, please.
So I'm not hearing a groundswell of support for the millage by anyone, whether their objection is to greater taxes or to uncertainty in our budget. The uncertainty in our budget is my concern. I think we have more work to do. And the point of the meeting today is to decide up or down whether we put something on the November ballot. I'm not hearing support for it. At some point, Mr. Chair, if you're looking for a motion, I'm prepared to make it. to put the thing on the ballot and then to vote against it. So that would be my suggestion at this stage of the discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Unless there's overwhelming support, again, which I can't see or hear from the audience or our commission, I believe we're gonna have to adjourn the meeting with no decision on the millage and have an expectation of Plan B to get started immediately. Mike? Your thoughts?
I don't disagree with what you're saying. Phil has a question though, I believe, or a statement or something.
Well, kind of a, yeah, statement. I would definitely support a police safety millage before I would look at cutting retirees' health benefits. That was a promise we made. You got to live up to your promises. That's how I see it. Might disagree, it might be illegal, but you know, it's just the right thing to do. So that's just my point. A millage would, at least if we do the millage, and it's voted down, the public has told us what they want. And that's fair, I guess. But to just go in and trim retiree insurance, I don't like that. I won't support it. Thank you.
Well, Phil, I believe that every commissioner has something they won't support. I don't believe as a good commissioner, we can lift things off the table. We need to be aware that things are gonna have to be reduced. Now, I appreciate where you come from. I completely do. And I have wrestled with this for a long time, but I don't think that the commission at this time is willing to do completely. You know, you can't try to protect something. There can't be sacred cows. You've got to be able and be willing to look at everything. If you're going to be involved in a budget, you have to have all your tools available to you to balance that budget. At this time, the administration is putting forward that we go for a public safety bill. While I hear one commissioner supporting it, I have 4 that have kind of spoken to the negative. So I would have to say that if we want to call a vote, I ask the commissioners that support a public safety millage to make it, and let's vote her up or down. So that way we know where we're at.
Okay, I can agree with that. We were talking about trying to reach a consensus. And I wanted you to know where I stood is I could support the safety village before I would support cutting retirees' health insurance. So that's my part of a consensus.
Commissioner Walls wants to speak.
You know, if I understand correctly, it was a few years ago when Headley come in, which limited the tax base coming into the state or the facility or our county, that limited it and put a cap onto it. As things grew, things cost more. I think that Headley in this particular case is a little bit outdated and needs to be either re-updated or eliminated. I mean, granted, nobody hates paying more taxes than I do. But when we get to the point where the cost of us to do business is exceeding the revenues coming in, then there has to be adjustments made. And as I look at the budget and the cuts that we've made, and we talk about defunding the sheriff's department and defunding road patrol with trying to balance the budget. And I know, Tony, I see that you're shaking their head, but it all boils down to that's the biggest pie out there, that there could be some funding that comes from. I agree with letting the voters decide. They're the ones that gave us Headley. They're the ones that can tell us that, no, we want you to cut it even deeper. We want to tell you that we still think that you're not spending the dollar correctly. We've had overwhelming response from the folks in the Parks Department, the folks in the animal shelter departments. The public has came right out and said, we want these things. They've done a really good job, I think, of representing how they want to spend their money in the county. Let's give them the opportunity to do that. Let them tell us what they think of how things are doing. The surveys and things that we've gotten back from different people have told us. They've actually said, you're doing a good job. Keep up the good work. I can't see anybody saying anything bad about Jackson County DOT. It's phenomenal. We're far superior to different counties across the state. And I think we're doing the same thing everywhere. So the voters come to us and told us years ago with Headley, and now they're coming back and telling us other things. I would take and put a motion together that let's put it on the ballot and let the voters tell us. That is a motion.
We have a motion on the floor. Commissioner Duckham supporting it. Commissioner Elwell speaking to the motion.
What's the millage rate? How much does it bring in?
Mr. Overton?
1 mil, 4,700,000.
You guys need to mute. The rate would be dependent upon what you set for a millage. What I had initially proposed was a rate of 1 mil, that's $1 per 1,000 of value. So if you have a $200,000 home, that would be $100 a year roughly for this. I would hasten to add though that that is more than what we need specifically at this time. The additional dollars there, $500,000 was for capital. So if you were to go to $500,000, that puts you, we'll break even. We're close. We're within a few $100,000. I'm sure we can get there. That would put us more or less at a balance if the voters were to approve that. Although at that time, we do not have capital funds.
So Mike, so the total amount it would bring in would offset the 2.7 million you're saying?
Not completely.
Not the full thing, but close enough. That would, but again, that solves half our problem. Not that we have to solve it all today, but that is correct. And then when the $500,000 in 21 expires, you're back to the same levy that you have today as far as taxes go, if you only go up a half. Myself, I've been one to, if I'm going to the trouble, I would like to solve the problem, but it's the pleasure of the board.
Great. Now that's cut out. Mistake.
Your mic open, Dave.
Dave, I know. I'm looking for Dave Elwell. Are you finished, Mr. Elwell?
I am, thank you.
Thank you. Talking to the question, we're going to Commissioner Bear.
The public safety millage proposal, the text that I have says it's 1 mil will generate $4,733,000 plus dollars. So 1 mil of $200,000 property, you'll be paying 200 a year, not 100.
No.
There was a discussion about $500,000. Well, the proposal is for 1 full mil. Can we get some clarification on that?
Tony, the millage wasn't set. All there was a motion for a millage. Mr. Walls did not use the proposal that's in your hand. That's the example that the administration put out. That's all that is an example, sir.
Okay, could you reread the motion for me so I'm clear?
Commissioner Walls moved that we go forward with the public safety millage supported by Commissioner Duckham. So we're waiting for a millage rate to be set. We're waiting for the years to be set. Those all can be set by this board. All we have is a motion for a millage. We have a lot of work ahead of us here. Corey Kennedy, then Daniel Mahoney.
You answered my question, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Mahoney.
I guess my comment is, I think that this is moving a little fast. I kind of feel like we're cornered to either vote it up or down now at this point without being given additional time for additional information that we've all been discussing for the last hour. However, the big comment that got us to this point, which I agree with completely, and I guess I'm curious, how can we go about having some type of open forum, maybe a public hearing or something like that, to get some actual input from the public on this before we even move forward with it, would be my big question. I see some heads shaking no, but I'm asking for clarification, not for a yes or no.
Unfortunately, we have, you're correct, backed ourselves into a corner, Daniel, by having the meeting today at the last minute, which we all don't like. But that's where we're at, and that's why we get paid to be county commissioners, to be able to wrestle all of this through and come up with something that resembles effort that we can give to the public to vote on.
I totally appreciate that, but I also think that our administration gets paid much, much more to make sure that things like this don't happen and that things don't come before us last minute, at least not before all of us. You know, I think some of us have been privy to the path that we're looking to go, and some of us haven't. So in this situation, I totally understand that this is what we are elected for. And I'm up to the challenge, Mr. Chairman. I'm definitely up to the challenge, but I don't like being put in this situation without being able to have more additional information presented to us. So for that reason, I won't be in support of it.
Daniel, I think while I totally agree with you, I think you should look at Commissioner Elwell and Administrator Overton and ask them about the horrid discussion we had Friday morning about doing this. I'm with you. I don't like where we're at. I don't think it's the right place to be. Nobody gave us COVID. No one shut down the state other than the governor. We have to deal with what the cards are we were dealt. And it doesn't matter what happened in the past, unfortunately.
So,
We did not know where we were until just recently. And I'm sorry to say that.
One last question.
Yeah,
should this motion fail, is there another opportunity for us to entertain a public safety millage? And what time frame? I know I heard it, but I just don't recall what Mike said is our time frame on being able to ask for this millage if this motion should fail.
August 11th. The deadline is tomorrow at 5 p.m.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah. So, well, I just was informed I lost an hour. We're now at 4 p.m. I had Tony Bear, then Daniel. I believe Phil was next. Or no, Corey. Corey was next. I'm sorry. Corey. You're all set? Phil? You're all set? I see you're waving your hand, David. I want to make sure everyone else has a chance. Earl, you had your hand waved for a moment. Is it? Have you removed your?
I think it was in relationship to the getting specific on the motion as to millage and years and things like that. I think I kind of gave up on that because given the uncertainties that Commissioner Mahoney has just noted and the misgivings that other commissioners have noted, I'm a no regardless on what the specifics would be.
Commissioner Elwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You threw my name out there, and I think you meant that in a positive way.
Yes, I did.
And
It was more,
when you, and I took
it
it
was more
that way.
about
When
me.
you, yeah, you were there with us. When we discussed it Friday in the chair, vice chair meeting with Mike, my opinion was that it is late, but we need to discuss it. I mean, granted, there's not much time left to put this together. I didn't think there was enough time to do it, but if we had not had this discussion today, we'd be talking about where to make cuts, and we're going to have to deal with that regardless. So my opinion was, I thought we should have this meeting and talk about these things to get information to the commissioners. Wasn't meant to be in a negative way. I won't support it either. There's too much up in the air. I'm looking at the 1 mil proposal that was on board docs, and it raises an estimated $4.7 million. We're talking about a $2.7 million deficit. So it's just too late, in my opinion, to get put together reasonably. I wouldn't necessarily support it until the Chandler Road jail millage was off, but potentially then. Thank you.
Commissioner Duckham.
If we went with the 4.7 millage, could that money also be used as it's for public safety? Can we buy new patrol cars with that millage also?
Right, because they could give you capital outlay.
So that would help our,
Mike, verbalize, don't sit and nod, please.
I thought you were going to. Yes, yes, that's all public safety expense. Remember, this public safety, by and large, is funded through general fund. So yes, this monies would only represent maybe 50%, right around 50, 51%, I believe, of the number of the funding for public safety.
but it would go a long ways, or it would balance our budget and give us some capital improvement room also, because we don't know where we can buy the next police car. We don't know how, for sure, you know?
Well, we know it's going to have to come from general fund.
Well, maybe it's, as long as we can buy it through public safety, maybe this is money well spent. Somebody just needs to pick a number. I don't know what they are. You talk 1 mil, maybe it's 3/4 of a mil. But, you know, if we can't give our public safety, we're in a horrible position. So,
To be clear, this is not an all or nothing, meaning if we don't get a public safety millage, we're not going to have public safety. That has not been said. I don't believe anybody would believe that anyways. We need to, if the board is not inclined to seek millage, it really comes right down to us looking long and hard at general fund and deciding what we're going to have to cut by the end of this year, because our budget starts in January for 21. And it's no different than we've all had to do at our home at one point in our lives, I'm sure. And we will get the job done. It's just that simple. Agreed that this is, timing is not great, that's for sure. But, those things happen. I mean, like you say, COVID's one thing, but the Supreme Court just ripped our $2 to $3 million capital expenditure fund out from underneath us, last week. So, these things come fast and furious. We have little to do but respond. The cards have been laid on the table. We got to figure out our best move and move forward. Regardless of what you guys decide, we will make it work one way or another. It's that simple. Now,
yes,
I would add that if you're not inclined to do a millage this year, as I think others have suggested or at least stated, that in 21 is the last year of the the jail millage, of which $900,000 funds jail operations, which is all part of the sheriff's budget of public safety. And frankly, that millage, while it expires in 21, the last bill goes out December of 21. So that means it's paid in 22. So we have that money will come in 22, but no more. That means in 22, we're going to be up against it again, and we'll have to make some decisions as to what we're going to do to make up the additional $900,000. The jail bond will be done but there'll still be another $900,000 hole created by the expiration of that millage. So you could wait till 22. There's challenges with that beyond what we're having to cut this year will be how we buy patrol cars as well as other capital needs next year and in 22. Because if we run a millage in 22, the first revenue would be 23, to be clear.
Okay, you know, I'm all for the people making the decision, just like Rodney said, is let them tell us what to do. Do you want this as is and continue on, or do you say, no, we don't want no more taxes? Let our bosses tell us what they want to do, what they want us to do. That's just how I view the millage, that's all. I'm done, thank you.
So gentlemen, with all that in mind, if we were to go for a half mil, 0.5, that'd give us $2.35 million. And we set the millage for 3 years. That'll put us at the end of the jail millage. It would give us the opportunity to work through all of this and give us our public safety that we need with no capital outlay. And you'd still have to make cuts. And it would give us 3 years to figure out how we're going to pay for the sheriff's department. And that could mean anything. So we have on the table at the moment that we're going to go for a millage. We have no language within that. I'm attempting to fill the slots. Does anyone have alternatives to fill that slots other than what the default language is that the administration put out, which was 1 mil, $4.7 million, 10 years?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. I don't need
I
a
can-
motion. I don't need a motion, Phil. I just kind of talking to people about it right now.
No, I know
I realize
that.
I'm way out of sequence here.
No. I kind of like what you're doing. You say 3-year mill?
3 years.
Mm-hmm. And then if
Half.
revenue sharing comes back, it can expire and we're back doing it the way we're doing it right now.
Well, our reserve is roughly 19%.
Yeah, we're about out of it.
We can't go any lower on that. We're fully aware of the delinquent tax fund. We're having to look at a bond possibly of that to make that program run for another year. I don't think it's a good idea for us to look at like what you said, Phil. I'm not a fan of taking healthcare away from retirees. We don't give our retirees cost of living. We don't give our retirees a 13th check. We don't do anything for them. Some of them, the healthcare is what they get that really makes them get through it. There's others that not so much. But that being said, I think we need to look at this, and I think if we explain it to the voters that this is a stopgap to help us get through it. If they feel it's the right thing to do, they're gonna agree and support us. If they're not going to agree, then we're gonna have to go to Plan B, and that Plan B will have to be activated within roughly 38 days because you're gonna get the no vote. You're gonna end up with the December meeting cycle to activate everything, plus special meetings right after the election on Tuesday in November. So it really doesn't give us a lot of time even then to work with stuff. Commissioner Mahoney.
I'm just curious for clarification. Thank you for calling on me. I'm just curious for clarification. So at the end of this 3 years, that is also the same time that our current millage will be expiring, or the collection of our current Chandler Road facility millage will be expiring. So then essentially in 3 years, we're going to go back and ask for another millage. Is that would that be correct? I can't hear you.
I apologize, Daniel, I was muted. Yeah, I guess that would be it, but who knows where we're gonna be? We could have all of a sudden huge new industry that's appeared in central Michigan. And we have an influx of 40,000 high-paying jobs, and everybody here is going to work, and property values are going in the right direction, and we're getting new investment that's very helpful towards us. State revenue sharing could be kicked up. Who knows? I wish I had that crystal ball, but I'm thinking that we have to explain to the voters why we're doing what we're doing. And I think that the message, and the other thing too, we're going to have a new sheriff. Who knows how he wants to enforce sheriff law? With the sheriff department, he may want to change the way it works. So we have many different things that come into play here. Short term, we have a budget deficit. We got to go to the people and explain it to them. And I think this is the best message that we can carry going forward, would be that let's ask the voters for the money to get us to the point where we're going to be. It does not make our staff happy. I know that, because I know where they want to be, and I know where others would like us to be at. I just think we have to do what's responsible. I think what's responsible is ask them for the help we need right now. Corey.
So the two communities that I represent, they're already paying a millage for public service, and I can't see them being asked to pay for another one. I honestly, truly feel we've got to be more creative than just putting a millage on the ballot. We need to look at some cuts, some strategic cuts, and we also need to look at some sources of revenue. I gave one idea. I know the administrator didn't like it very much because it would be a burden on individuals that don't have the highest income. But I feel if people are getting immunizations or health services, a slight increase there, that could generate some revenue. And I think collectively as a group, we could come up with some ideas to come up with some revenue, and then of course, make some cuts. But it's not, I understand everything that you guys are saying. It's not something I'm going to support.
So Corey, we have not quite 10,000 customers at the health department. You're going to put a $5 tax on them. You raise $5 a person for each time they come and get a shot. Let's say they give us $75,000 a year. I believe that's a little short of $2 million.
Yeah,
It could be wrong.
No,
But on the other hand, Corey, the administration has to look at that because we're leaving him short. We're only giving him a $500,000. He's still got to make up close to $500,000. If 2.7 is his magic number, plus anything he wants to buy in capital. So just so everyone's aware, a $500,000 does not take us to whole.
Duly noted. Yeah, and I'm not saying that the $5 thing was going to be the silver bullet.
Oh, no, not at all. But that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it can be part of a solution. But we're not going to be able to get everything there. By raising fees on people that are paying zeros for tests right now. And a lot of that stuff, we're going to run into where we can't charge. We're not allowed to if we accept federal money to be able to give shots or immunizations or that type of stuff. So,
well, that's just one idea. That's not.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, even if we up fees across the board and we only add $200,000 to it, we still haven't made it all up.
I get it. There's
Yeah.
gonna,
You know, that's just a thought on it. So I guess, we're gonna add, Darius, go ahead.
Just real quick, I do appreciate the ingenuity Commissioner Kennedy is offering. But my question is more or less just for parliamentary procedure. Just want to make sure that we're doing this correctly. Now, Commissioner Waltz has a motion that was seconded by Commissioner Duckham. If I'm understanding this correctly, Commissioner Shotwell, you have a different idea. So does that mean that either Commissioner Waltz needs to, I'm just trying to remember the procedure here. Does that mean that Commissioner Waltz has to withdraw his motion and then a new motion then be put on the floor?
No, sir. What would occur, because Commissioner Walls is just asking for a millage, we would vote on whether or not we're gonna have a millage.
Also, then this would be
Then yes, and then after that, we'll look for another motion that's going to fill the 3 slots on the ballot language. What the millage is, the amount, and the number of years.
okay. I just wanted to be sure. Thank you for.
Commissioner Duckham.
I'm sorry. I just want to make a statement here about the looking for cuts. We look at, if you go back and remember our mandated and non-mandated monies and expenses we have, we would have to gut about every non-mandated service and harm all of it to some degree to get to this $2.2 million. I don't see a choice but cut big someplace or replace the money with a millage. And I mean, if the people want the service, they're going to tell us. But, you know, we're going to have to go to MSU Extension. We're going to have to go to Veterans Affairs and maybe eliminate all that stuff. And it all means something to somebody. And we've cut, since I've been a commissioner, we've cut every year. And we're just plain run out of places to cut. Now we're down to possibly insurance or possibly road patrol or got everything else or raise money. So I'd like to let the people tell us what to do. If they want to raise some money, I'm all for it. But I'll do what the people say. So I'm done. Thank you. Appreciate the talk.
Okay, if there's not further discussion, I would like to call the question at this time and ask the clerk to call the roll. You're voting first. What we're going to do is we're going to vote for a millage or against a millage. And if it passes, then I'm going to expect to hear a motion on what the level of the millage should be. And do you want to take each item separately, or do you want to take each item, if you want to take it all together as one? I think I'll wait and see what kind of motion's made after we deal with this. So Amanda, we're voting either for or against a millage, correct?
Correct.
If you could call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Baer,
No.
Commissioner Walls,
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy,
no,
Commissioner Duckham,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Plesky,
No.
Commissioner Mahoney,
No.
Commissioner Williams,
No.
Commissioner Elwell,
No.
Chairman Shotwell.
No.
7 noes, 2 yes.
Okay, so then we're done. We have to now ask the administration to put together the plan. And we'll begin going to work on it.
If I may.
Certainly, sir.
I would just add, that no worries. We are well on our way to the plan. We are in the weeds all over the place in these departments looking at things. It won't be pretty, but it'll get done. And we'll be bringing that to you for consideration in the very near future. Thank you.
There's no public comment, is there, Michelle?
No public comment.
Thank you. Commissioner comments? Darius
you
and
for-
then David.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be very brief. Now, as we see, the motion has failed, but I believe that all of those that have, from what it appears anyway, that all of those that have voted no are voting no for various reasons. And so as we continue to move forward, I just want to make it clear, and I can speak for myself, and I'm sure that the other commissioners would agree the same. We're not saying no, that we don't want public safety. We're not saying that we don't want to make sure that our constituents that live in our districts that they don't have the public safety needs that they deserve. But we are saying we want to be able to come together to put together a comprehensive plan to be able to do that, and look at various things from all across the board. This has nothing, in my opinion, this has nothing to do with defunding the police or anything of that nature, but it's making sure that we're doing everything that we can before we yet again put another millage in front of constituents. For some members of our great county, paying an additional $100, even $200 is not an issue or even a burden. But for some, when it comes to time to pay taxes, that is a large burden for many. So I want to make sure that we can put together a plan. If we come back to this and we visit this, we do all of our homework, and we find that we have to come back and the only way to do it is to put forth the millage, then so be it. But let's make sure that we are putting together a plan that services all of the needs of the constituents in a way and in a manner that can financially be done for everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Elwell.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for the discussion. That's it.
Commissioner Bear.
Previous meetings, when after a motion has been made, and I've tried to add some comments, I was quickly shut down that my comment wasn't specific to the exact motion. So the last 10 minutes of our discussion, where we were talking about possibility of different years, different amounts, different monies, was not relative to the specific motion. I'm just looking for some consistency. Everyone should get treated the same.
Any other commissioner comments? Seeing none, I need a motion to adjourn. Corey Duckham. Any other questions? All in favor? Those opposed? Duly carried. We are adjourned.